Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking how an ancient Greek polymath named Aristotle essentially invented the foundations of modern logic, science, and philosophy. Honestly, it is nearly impossible to overstate his influence on human history. The intellectual frameworks he built shaped everything from medieval scholarship to the very vocabulary we use to describe reality today.
Because his work is just incredibly broad, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The mind of the school. 2. Inventing the rules of logic. 3. The nature of reality. 4. The four causes. And finally 5. The first true scientist. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The mind of the school. From Plato's student to Alexander's tutor. We have to start chronologically with the man behind the mind, tracing his physical journey through the ancient world. So he was born way back in 384 BC in Stagira, up in northern Greece. Aristotle was actually the son of a royal physician, which probably sparked his lifelong obsession with the natural sciences. At 18, he heads to Athens to join Plato's academy, and his sheer brilliance quickly earns him the nickname Mind of the School. After Plato dies, Aristotle's rise is just remarkable. By 343 BC, he's summoned to Macedonia to literally serve as the personal tutor to a young Alexander the Great. Talk about a resume builder, right? Eventually, he goes back to Athens, establishes his own legendary school called the Lyceum, and organizes this massive library. But his story in Athens ends pretty abruptly in 322 BC. See, when anti-Macedonian sentiment flared up in Athens right after Alexander's death, Aristotle became a huge target because of his past royal connections. As he fled the city to a family estate in Euboea, he famously declared, "I will not allow the Athenians to sin twice against philosophy." He was, of course, determined to avoid the tragic trial and execution that had happened to Socrates decades earlier. Moving on to Section 2, Inventing the Rules of Logic, the Organon and the Syllogism. We're stepping into a world of intellectual chaos to see exactly how Aristotle gave us the fundamental grammar for logical reasoning. Okay, think about this for a second. If you have ever logically deduced a conclusion to win an argument, you are actually running Aristotle's ancient intellectual software. His systematic study of logic was so profound, so dominant, that centuries later, the Enlightenment philosopher Immanuel Kant basically said that with Aristotle, logic had reached its completion. It was already a finished puzzle. In a collection of works that later became known as the Organon, he invented the syllogism. He literally presented the math of language and deduction. It goes like this: all men are mortal. All Greeks are men, therefore all Greeks are mortal. He used variables like S, M, and P to analyze these propositions and how they relate to each other. He invented a system of formal logic that completely dominated Western thought until the 19th century. Section 3. The nature of reality, metaphysics, and moderate realism. Let's see how these rules of logic build into the rules of existence itself, diving into a field he called first philosophy, which we now call metaphysics. This is where things get really interesting, because it marks a dramatic intellectual rebellion against his master, Plato. So Plato believed that universal forms, like the perfect, ideal concept of an apple, existed out there in some entirely separate ethereal dimension. But Aristotle? He argued for what's known as moderate realism. He was like, no, the universal ideal form of an apple isn't in some other world. It's physically located within each individual physical apple. For Aristotle, matter and form are combined directly in the objects we can actually see and touch. And this brilliantly illustrates his solution to the whole nature of change, like how does a thing become something else? Aristotle argued that everything has a potential state. He called it dynamis, which is like a seed in the dirt, or maybe a person with the innate capability to learn the flute. That potential can then become an actualized state, or entelecheia, like a fully grown plant, or a skilled musician playing a song. Change, for all of us, is simply that journey from potentiality to actuality. Section 4. The four causes, the anatomy of existence. To really grasp how Aristotle organized reality, we need to look at his famous system for explaining exactly why any given object exists in the first place. Let's use a wooden table as an everyday example. We can see his four causes built step by step. First up, the material cause, literally the wood it's made out of. Second, the formal cause, the specific design or arrangement that the matter takes. Third is the efficient cause, the primary source or agency that built it, like the carpenter swinging their hammer. And finally, the final cause, or the telos, which is the ultimate purpose or function it serves. In this case, dining. Every object, every biological function, even the modern products we built today, can be broken down using these exact four steps.
Section 5. The first true scientist, bringing philosophy down to earth. What is so fascinating about this final phase is how we bring Aristotle down to earth. where he operated as what many historians consider the world's very first true scientist.
Rather than just philosophizing in an armchair, Aristotle actually got out there and did rigorous, hands-on empirical research. He spent 2 full years at the Pyrrha Lagoon on the island of Lesbos just observing and cataloging marine biology, and his observations were stunningly accurate. Amazingly, he even correctly identified and described the reproductive hectocaudal arm of the octopus. I mean, it is genuinely wild to think that someone in the 4th century BC was out in a lagoon doing systematic marine biology, gathering data from fishermen and travelers, just completely creating a brand new scientific field from scratch.
He also heavily categorized ancient physics, organizing all matter. He took the traditional 4 elements, earth, water, air, and fire, and he mapped them to specific properties, hot, cold, wet, and dry. He also assigned them natural motions, so earth naturally moves down and fire naturally moves up, but then he added a crucial 5th element, ether. This was a divine, unchanging substance that he believed makes up the heavenly spheres and moves in eternal circles.
He even stated early quantitative laws of motion. He argued mathematically that the speed of a falling body is proportional to its weight and inversely proportional to the density of the fluid it's falling through. Now, while we know today this isn't exactly true in a perfect vacuum, modern physicists point out that it's actually a highly accurate approximation for how objects fall through fluid mediums, like water or air here on Earth. It was an incredibly astute observation, and it held immense authority for centuries.
While thinkers like Archimedes, Galileo, and Newton did eventually correct his physics centuries later, Aristotle's staggering genius ruled human thought for 2 millennia. From the anatomy of an octopus to the literal mathematics of logic, he created a framework that guided human civilization. It leaves us with a pretty humbling final thought to consider. If a mind this brilliant could establish accepted truths that lasted 2,000 years before being overturned, what accepted facts of our modern world are going to be overturned tomorrow? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and never stop questioning the world around you.